Welcome to the Pipeline and People podcast, the show for founders who want cleaner decisions and better weeks. Today's episode is for anyone that wants to build a business that actually feels good to run, one that doesn't burn out your team or bury you in admin. We're talking about the future of employee enrichment and how inner alignment, ethical tech, and small tools might be the missing link. Today's guest is Molly Sharp, founder of Workforce Energetics, a new solo venture focused on employee enrichment, ethical AI integration, and building affordable custom tools for small businesses. Molly, thank you so much for joining today. Could you give us a quick look at your background and what led you to starting Workforce?
Thank you so much for having me. My background really spans a breadth of marketing functions. I started in project management roles and was doing a lot of field management. I was working with teams of influencers and brand ambassadors, and that got me in love with the management side of things and talent acquisition, doing a lot of recruiting too. From there, I spent some time in recruiting and then made my way to an employee experience business partner function. And that was where I found fulfillment because I was able to make meaningful relationships with people and be with them the full employee life cycle. And that doesn't just include, recruiting them and training them and being with them in employment. It also included, doing layoffs and having to be with them as they offboarded as well. And so that was a good training ground for me to understand the business side and why we have to make those decisions, but also how we can do it in a way that is ethical and can still support people after they leave. And I decided to go off on my own because I wanted to represent my own values and morals. Working in marketing is fun and amazing, but a lot of the bigger brands, the money's going into the pockets of billionaires. I wanted to focus more on small to mid-sized businesses, specifically either within my community or around it, just because I kind of see the future of work going a little bit more to the freelance model, to the small businesses. We're kind of all going back into a little bit of our tribal mentality. And I wanted to serve that in conjunction with doing some pretty in-depth meditation. I just figured out that my purpose is maybe not in marketing, but I can use the combination of all of my skills to hopefully make an impact on people and businesses around me. So that's what led me here.
That's amazing. And what does Workforce Energetics do? What do you specialize in? If a friend comes up to you and says, "Oh, what do you do?" How would you respond?
So it's a good question because I'm still figuring it out all the time. I'm pivoting all the time, new business, and I am an employee experience consultant, but I've also found quite a bit of traction in ethical AI integration. There's a ton of people really scared of AI out there, whether they're scared of being replaced by it or they're just scared of getting into it. What I've found is that if we can use these tools to really empower people and upskill them and not treat it as a replacement for humans, but rather a tool that can augment your skills, then it can be really effective not only for the individuals themselves, but also for business productivity, ROI, and the bottom line. That's really where I've found a little bit more of a niche is helping people to understand how to incorporate AI and how to talk about it in a way that doesn't terrify their employees. We're also amidst mass layoffs almost everywhere right now. So I think a lot of larger companies have jumped the gun on eliminating functions rather than allowing people to learn them and learn how to use AI and how to better themselves. So I think the pendulum is going to swing back a little bit where there will be a bit more of a focus on okay, well, how is your company using AI? And am I just going to be writing my replacement, building a GPT around myself? Or can I actually use it and free myself up from some of the more monotonous tasks to think strategically and hone in on my core skills? That's what I'm really hoping to do. We're working on the elevator pitch.
No, I think it was really well said, though, honestly. And I'm not shocked because that exact topic comes up almost every podcast, the notion of being replaced by AI. We're nowhere near that point. Everyone thinks they are, but like you said, you're going to be replaced by people that can use AI more effectively than you. And that's a popular sentiment with anyone in the AI space. But everyone that's scared of it, they hear AI and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job.
The Terminator and get freaked out. We're still a ways from that.
Oh yeah, for sure. What I want to get into today is why employee enrichment is a smarter play than just employee engagement, how small tools and ethical AI can help without adding complexity. And then I want to let you get into spirituality and the chakra system and how that overlaps with leadership and data. And then kind of some, what advice or things that founders can do this quarter to build something that feels better. So you said that workforce energetics is still early stage. What is the core thing that you're offering right now?
The core thing I'm offering right now, I've been doing a lot of employee sentiment diagnostics, but I've also been helping people build vibe-coded tools to replace potential SaaS model software in their workforce because it's really costly and oftentimes they don't use very much of it. So that's been pretty much my core offerings at the moment, is helping people to understand that where their employee sentiment stands and actually developing meaningful insights of how they can better their employee offerings or their communication or perks and benefits. It's typical ENPS, employee engagement scoring, but a lot of times if somebody's in an HR function, they're going to do these surveys, but are they actually developing meaningful insights, closing the loop, and providing energy back to the employees who filled out the survey? The resounding answer is pretty much no. Everybody is wearing multiple hats and they're saying, okay, if the employees feel heard and they fill out the survey, then we did it. Success. And the truth is that's not at all, that's just the beginning. It's more about what you can actually derive from those insights and give back to people. And that's, I think, where we're getting into the employee enrichment. We spend 40 hours a week in our jobs, and that's sometimes more than we spend with our own families. People are really, especially when I look at Gen Z, starting to care about the values of companies and being able to have the flexibility to still maintain, I hate to even say the work-life balance. It's more like work-life integration and getting a little bit away from some of the more structured rules of you have to be here for specific time periods, or there's so many different things that we can do for employees that can increase not only their sentiment, but also their engagement. When people love the place that they work, they do better work. And that's just the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to challenge you a bit here.
Do it.
You seem like you're pretty articulate and quick on your feet, so I'm curious on your perspective on this. So I've used a bunch of the vibe coding tools, and they're very good for sure. But there was a study done by MIT that says 95% of AI initiatives fail. So how do you have lots of coding experience to be able to go into the background to make sure that it's not vulnerable, to make sure that's enterprise grade or good enough? Right? How do you make sure? Because anyone can just go on lovable.com and say, oh, build me this app. What do you do differently?
I will preface by saying, do I have a lot of coding experience? No, but I have some, and I have a general understanding of coding structure and when something's not working, potentially where to look. I've also learned a lot through this process of vibe coding. I know we talked a little bit about this, like Lovable, I've used a little bit. Base 44 I'm using right now, and it seems to have a little bit more robust features, and you can actually get into the code on the back end and really dig around. And I use ChatGPT a lot to kind of go back and forth and say, okay, this is what I want this thing to do. Give me the code for it. Tell me, or copying and saying, this is my code right now. Tell me where it's wrong. In the process of doing this, I've actually learned a lot more of how to read code and where to find the errors, how to test and debug things. It's not as simple as just tossing a prompt into a coding tool and getting your app built. I've been building a passion project called the Vibe Quotient for the last couple months, and it takes time. It actually still very much takes time. I think I got it to probably 70% complete by some of my initial prompting. But since then, when you want to build on your features, you have to learn how to plug in APIs. You have to learn how to test and debug. That's a huge learning curve. If you're willing to learn with AI, then you can absolutely get yourself trained to do that. It is helpful to know enough to be dangerous and to have worked on web projects, on digital projects, and know how to point a DNS to a specific location. That, I would say, is still a level of human expertise that it's not to say that AI couldn't help you to get there, but it's been very helpful to me to have that background and to have a lot of developer friends. Because I've worked in marketing and in digital spaces for a while, I've got a ton of friends who are coders and developers that I can lean on and turn to. I actually ran my project, my Vibe Quotient project, by a good friend who is one of the best coders ever. He's unbelievable. And he was like, this is actually really impressive. I'm like seeing how the behavior works, and I'd like it to do these things. When I come in, I don't want to be doing homework. So using those people to give you feedback is also imperative. The AI can't give you the level of user experience feedback that a human can, and it also can't give you the strategy that a coder or a product manager can give. So that's where I think that there's still a huge human edge to some of these vibe coding tools. It's definitely not something you can just get in and do.
I actually tried to build my website on bolt.new, and it was okay, but the deeper I got into it and the more I was like, oh, I need to insert a CMS or like a auth feature or a backend or SEO, I was like, there's no way that I'm going to do this myself. It's like the more I dove deep into vibe coding, the less I knew, you know? Yeah. So yeah, that's a great way to respond to that challenge.
I feel that way all the time. I'm feeling more like I'm becoming a coder than a vibe coder, because as I get deeper into it, I'm having to get deeper into understanding of code and functions and variables and entities and where I'm pulling everything in from. So it is a really interesting process. And yeah, you can like build something that's like, this looks kind of good, but it will break if you don't understand where you're pointing things. I haven't played around enough with a ton of other tools, but I really like Base44 for the fact that it provides you a dashboard that you really can get deep into all of the code of your functions and everything like that. But it also is on a credit system. So having an additional AI to do a lot of the work before you use up your credits. I think my first month I went through 250 credits like 15 days. And now I feel like I could actually downgrade the number of credits that I'm using because I've gotten smarter about how to prompt it and when not to. Because I was just like getting mad at it and talking to it like my normal chat GPT, and that did not work.
Yep. Credit burn is real. I went through so many in like a week. I don't even know how many what it was, but I think I used like over 1 million credits on Bolt. Yeah. I do have the Vibe Quotient pulled up here if you wanted to give a very quick walkthrough of it.
So the Vibe Quotient is something I started developing with my chat GPT towards the beginning of this year. And it was really my way of putting the chakra system, which is an ancient Eastern wisdom around the energy centers in the body. I found they were a good way to map anything. When you talk about the chakra system, you're working from basically like your root level needs, like your stability, security, etc. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you work your way up to spirituality. And so I had applied that system of thinking into my chat GPT, and I was answering a series of questions every day and getting some level of scores. And that led me to build this tool more recently with Base44, because it was just something that I was like, okay, I want to track this. You know, I wear the Aura ring. I love a wearable diagnostic tool that can help me understand my inner alignment. And I wanted that to be a functioning app. So now what it is, there's multiple ways that you can conduct your analysis. There's some full assessments, and you get a cute little archetype at the end with some level of understanding of where each chakra is, if it's unbalanced, balanced, some things that you can do to balance it. I do a lot of yoga, incorporating some of those Eastern traditions, but also thinking about frequency and vibration. What frequencies or what kind of music could you listen to balance this chakra? That is all LLM based, all of the insight, but a lot of it is really helpful, and it also gives you that trackability to see, okay, well, typically around this time of the month, my solar plexus is always out of whack. So what's happening with my confidence towards the 15th of the month? Was that, second pay period? You can start to identify those things. My hope is to integrate it with other wearables, systems, with some agents to make it more proactive. But it's been really fun, and it's been my huge learning curve. So it's kind of my sandbox of where I'm testing all of my coding and vibe coding ability.
Very nice. And I understand it's not what you do, but who's the target for this? I feel like some people, especially in business, might hear chakra system and think it's a little bit too abstract for the 60-year-old white male running this business.
100%. The Vibe Quotient is not probably designed for the white 60-year-old CEOs of companies. That said, it could be used by them, but I would say that it's more likely going to be people who are trying to embark on a spiritual journey and better their understanding of themselves. People who are maybe a little bit more open-minded. As Americans, we come from such a patchwork culture and background that a lot of us are looking for some way to better understand ourselves. Religion has never been lower, and spirituality is having a moment right now. People are having these awakenings because they have so much access to information, especially now with AI. I know there's like AI psychosis going on where people are thinking they're channeling entities via ChatGPT. I would imagine if I'm looking at my audience profiles, it's probably going to be mostly women in the 20 to 40 age demographic who are looking to better themselves in some way.
Nice. I want to get into, a relatively new business, Workforce Energetics. What's the vision? 6 months, 12 months, more long term? Where do you want to take it? How does Vibe Quotient fit into that vision?
I actually recently switched my LLC to Sharp Energetics because I didn't want to be pigeonholed into workforce development forever. And I have such a passion for like the Vibe Quotient. I was like, how can I fit all of these things under an umbrella? In the medium term, I'm looking to get some contracts, become more of the consultant I know I am, specifically around incorporating AI technology. I'm working with some construction and HVAC companies as to, how they can utilize these tools. And I've got to be completely honest, the employee enrichment side of things isn't very sellable right now. It's not as marketable as I wish it was. And that's not to say that your HR leaders don't want to do it. If you can't measure the impact on the bottom line at the onset, then people aren't going to spend money on it right now. So I'm leaning into where can we save funds and find efficiencies, and I'm finding that the SaaS software is really where we can save a lot of budget. That is what I'm hoping to turn into, okay, we've saved all this budget, now can we reinvest it back in our people? So leading from that space is what I'm finding is gaining more traction right now. So I'm hoping to just kind of keep growing, hiring or expanding Workforce Energetics to more people, depending on the demand. I'd love to see where that goes. But again, I'm also developing some of these passion projects and want to see if maybe I can create an actual subscription app that people would want and that would enrich their lives in some way. I don't really care if it's on the employee and workforce side or if it's more on the personal and consumer side of things, but business to business seems to be where the traction and where it can be a little bit more lucrative right now.
HR is a hard place to sell to because the outcomes aren't always tangible or ROI based. People don't buy based on that. They buy on feelings. They buy on, what am I getting out of this? So if you say, I'm going to help your workforce or your culture, they're like,
what does that mean?
It's all about articulating what you can do for them and making them understand the value.
I'm excited. It's a scary place to be. I was in the corporate world for 15 years before this with steady income and upward trajectories. It's terrifying to be on my own, but it's also incredibly gratifying, especially when I get a little bit of external validation and people appreciate what I have to say or want to engage with me. It gives me a lot more fulfillment. My personal desire to uplift human consciousness in whatever way my little skills can do. It feels good.
Absolutely. I'm in the same boat, so completely understand. Just being conscious of time here, I do want to move on to, I have a quick rapid fire section, just a few questions, quick whatever's on the top of your head. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. One hiring or management myth that you'd love to retire?
Ooh. A hiring or management myth that I'd love to retire. I think management specifically is the myth that like somebody should be able to do it all and that everybody needs to be a unicorn. I found that a lot when I was doing recruiting. It is like, well, we need the unicorn. We need the person who's detail oriented, but also creative and a strategist. I just don't think that's true, and I don't think that's where we're headed. We try to collapse all of these various roles into one to save money. The truth is, People who are incredibly detail oriented may not have the ability to think as large and creatively as some of the more strategically minded people. And those more strategically minded people may not be great at the details. They might be horrible when it comes to writing the emails or getting words on paper. So I think that's where I'm hoping to see we start to shift our focus again, actual niche skills and expertise, and not expecting people to wear every single hat. Especially with managers, I feel for managers because they just keep absorbing more and more. We keep collapsing levels and they're taking on more managerial functions and more execution functions. Then they can't manage people. You have to have the time to actually manage the people.
I think that a lot of the times also that these people are promoted into manager positions, they are not necessarily managers. That's also a thing.
I've seen that a lot. It's important to honor tenure and it's important to honor good performance, but manager as a function needs to be somebody who cares about people and who can build people up, not just somebody who's great at their executionary role.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What's one daily ritual that makes you better at your job?
Meditation. I meditate every single day. Sometimes it's just 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 2.5 hours. I always prioritize meditating. I'm not going to sit here and say that I do it first thing in the morning every day. I try to not look at my phone first thing. I try to lay there for a minute and check in, think about my dreams and stuff. I like to meditate. I'll probably do it right after this. I like to do it in the afternoon when I'm having that 3 o'clock lag, where otherwise I'd get my 4th cup of coffee for the day. It gives me some good energy and it helps me to stay in tune with my own values and needs.
Amazing. Okay, finally, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received is and this is more of just a statement, I guess, but the only constant in life is change. And I think that applies right now to what's happening in our world and industry. If you're not prepared to evolve, to iterate, to change, you're going to fall behind. The people who are going to get replaced are the people who are not going to invest their time in understanding these tools that we now have available to us. They're not going to get replaced by the tools themselves. So the only constant in life is change.
Okay. I like that. All right. Well, Molly, thank you so much. This is both expansive and practical, exactly the type of conversation that I love to have on these podcasts. So thank you for joining. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you or learn more about Workforce Energetics or try out the Vibe Quotient, where could they do that?
Yeah, you can find me at workforceenergetics.com, or I think I'm on Instagram as Workforce Energetics, and you can check out thevibequotient.com with the in there if you want to align your chakras using modern tech.
All right, amazing. Until next time, this is the Pipeline and People podcast. I'm your host, Jaden.